Welcome to the third episode of the Archive Guys. I'm Matt Patterson, and these are my co-hosts,
Kelsey Milburn
and
W. Ferranti.
And we have a special guest today, director Noah Mucci.
Woo!
Hello.
Big round of applause.
And
Emoji applause graphics. Emoji applause graphics.
Wait, where are those?
Kelsey is the senior vice intern and in charge of making sure that Dan and I stick to the schedule, because this podcast, unlike the previous two podcasts, is going to be, we're going to make this one a tight 11 minutes.
Have fun
Nice.
with that.
All right.
11 minutes is good. Just enough time to talk about LUNAMANCER. So let's do it. Is that how you say the name?
Oh, very good, Kelsey.
Yes,
LUNAMANCER.
I did look up the title since you did not tell me the title. I found it on your LinkedIn.
Was that not in, that wasn't in the text that you were sent?
So
No.
wait, I just want to be clear on this. So Matt just
Ah.
said we're going to be talking to Noah Mucci, and then you had to do the rest on your own.
Yeah, it was, and Noah, who directed the movie I produced, is coming to speak to us. And I said,
I
well,
mean,
that's
that's all
nice.
true.
The movie you produced, that's enough info about the movie for me
Yeah.
to talk about it on this podcast.
So we're very excited to have in studio with us Noah Mucci, the director of the forthcoming, I would call it neo-realist dark fantasy motion picture, LUNAMANCER. Luna, welcome. Tell us about LUNAMANCER.
So LUNAMANCER was a film that I shot a couple years ago that was very much inspired by time that I spent in upstate New York. It was inspired by a dream that I had about fighting supernatural forces with crowbars. It's currently in the festival circuit, and we have a trailer for it.
What are you doing here? I'm here to find my sister. Say you find her. Then what? I bring her back. What are you doing back in town? Why do you have my car? It's good to see you. I felt Sue go through something. It's really painful. Leave the city.
You either embrace who you are or you fight it. Everybody's something.
Oh,
That's
chills.
great. I like that your protagonist is Wolverine with crowbars.
Yeah.
First time I watched it, we got to that establishing shot, and I just turned to Noah and was like, wait, is this Troy? It's like, yeah.
Yeah, you captured upstate New York perfectly.
It's perfect.
Yeah, there's a window of time where I feel like upstate New York is at its peak upstate New Yorkness, and we were lucky to shoot there. It's like that window of time right after the leaves have fallen, but before it starts snowing, and it's just like it looks
Where
how it
it's
feels.
It's just gray.
And before the
dreary.
gentrifiers move in.
Mhm.
Oh, wait, that's not seasonal.
Well, interestingly, like a year or two after principal photography, I guess it was like 2 years, HBO went up there and dressed Troy to be 1880 New York City. It's the guy who did Downton Abbey, his new show.
The Gilded Age.
Yeah, the Gilded,
Gilded
Age.
Age, yeah.
So
Which
does
is what I wanted to do
HBO
for Lunamancer, but I couldn't afford it. So.
Yeah.
Oh, of
But
course.
We were talking to the guy who helped Noah secure locations on the ground, and
Patrick Harris.
HBO has discovered Troy as well, but they put dirt on all the main roads to make it look like the 19th century.
Of course they did.
Instead of doing that, Noah found the 150-year-old buildings that had collapsed upon themselves and made that the the netherworld, I guess. Weird Fest is in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. It's going to be on, I believe, March 6th, which is a Sunday. We're closing the festival.
Oh, and March in Wisconsin is when it's really, really warm and balmy.
Mhm.
Noah has done something which I think might be of interest to our viewers, which is that Noah recently, and this is pandemic recently, so within the past 2 years, rewatched all of the James Bond movies in reverse chronological order.
Right. Noah, you had never really seen many or any James Bond movies?
I'd seen Goldeneye at summer camp on movie night or something, but I had no formal James Bond experience prior to this.
Kelsey, how many James Bond movies have you seen?
That's what I was just about to say. Now, when we're talking James Bond, are we talking Daniel Craig James Bond? Are we talking all of James Bond?
Any Bond, all Bond, even
All Bond.
even alternate Connery Bond.
Okay. So this is as much as I know about James Bond. Sometimes I get who played him confused with Batman. So I don't
He just never puts on the Batman suit. He's just doing
he just sometimes he's Batman and sometimes he's James Bond. I don't know.
So Noah, you experienced James Bond, but Benjamin Button style.
Yeah, basically.
You watched the franchise grow younger as you grew older.
I enjoyed Skyfall so much. It was the first real Bond film I'd ever seen.
Is that where you started? Did you start with Skyfall?
Yeah, Skyfall had just came out and I watched it. And I remember thinking, that was awesome. Now what? And so I just started working my way backwards through the Craig films and then got to Casino Royale, loved it, and was like, cool, now what? And just kept that train going. It was really interesting to see the de-evolution of the character back to the version of the actor that got them the role. I mean, I think the most jarring moment was going from peak Pierce Brosnan to Roger Moore's final film. It's going from the
dude, you've just done what all the critics did. You skipped the 2 Dalton films. Poor Timothy Dalton.
Oh,
you went. Dalton is in between Moore and Brosnan. Everyone forgets poor Timothy.
Okay,
but what's Timothy?
And I actually really but I didn't skip the Dalton films.
I'm sure you watched them.
Movies.
And I think we should be referring to him as Doom Patrol's Timothy Dalton.
Oh,
I have no idea what that means. But the Dalton films.
Prince Baron.
This guy played James Bond.
Yeah,
he did.
Dalton?
Yeah.
What is he in?
So
that
much more Rocketeer and Hot Fuzz are the 2 roles that I feel like most people know him from. But he just has so
Flash
much more
Gordon,
of an
1980.
air of a Bond villain than he does of a James Bond. That seeing his films, seeing the film franchise in reverse, and then seeing Dalton, who I'm so much more accustomed to seeing play that mustache twirling villain, was just an extra layer of flippery. I was a fan of him. He was between the Moore and the
and the interesting thing is the Dalton films were an attempt to do the Craig thing first. It's like the Moore films got campier and campier, but even within the supposed super campy period, there's some good films in there. And you know, Roger Moore doesn't get enough credit because there was a reason they wanted him for Bond originally, but he couldn't do it because of The Saint. And then they were like, okay, we need to get serious and grim and gritty. And then we got the 2 Dalton films. And then they're like, oh, let's get the charming guy. And then Pierce Brosnan, at first, Goldeneye was semi neo-brutal, semi-camp. But then by Die Another Day, we're like in full-on Invisible Car mode. So then when Casino Royale comes out, it's like a massive reset. But you went
That's
the
how
other
you know
way.
a film's great is there's an invisible car.
Yeah.
But when Kelsey kind of mixes up Batman and James Bond, that's actually not far off the genre development path because, you know, was Roger Moore the Adam West, like the Batman 66, and then they
He became
attempted...
it. He didn't start
Right.
off that
He
way,
did,
but I
yeah,
think it's
yeah.
like,
Well, it's like Live and
it's
Let
sort of-
Die began as a Connery script, and you can
Yeah.
tell. And then
it's very different.
Moore's flourishes increase very quickly. You know.
But then and then they tried to course correct, which was like Danny Elfman 1989 Batman kind of thing. You know, like it has some of the same parallels, but it is longer running, and it's interesting. Noah's approach is interesting because I know other people who, and especially when the Blu-ray set came out, they're like, I'm going to watch all the Bonds, you know, as presented on this Blu-ray in order from Dr. No onwards. Noah's
which
Benjamin
is what
Buttons.
I'm doing now. I'm actually mid-process of watching all of the Bond films chronologically now, and it's not as good. But
Okay.
yeah.
So you recommend definitely going backwards. I also want to point out
100%. I mean,
just now.
But to be fair, I might make that recommendation for like any film franchise, like, you know.
Okay.
But there's a deconstructionist like aspect to that I think like as a like
I think we could I think we can do a whole spin-off podcast which is just Marvel backwards.
Marvel backwards. Sure.
Marvel backwards.
Any franchise backwards. Doctor Who backwards.
Doctor Who backwards.
Doctor Who backwards. Yes.
I mean, I'll also
these
just
stories
say
are
right
too
now,
fast. I can't wait for them to slow down.
Oh, can we have the 3-hour version?
Yeah, I got Sean Connery confused with Pierce Brosnan. I just want to say that. I thought Pierce Brosnan's name was Sean Connery.
Pierce would enjoy that confusion.
Yeah.
Sean Connery though, like I didn't have a sense of him de-aging though. Like he seemed pretty consistently that like the same age like throughout the majority of the films that I remember him.
Next, we're going to be talking about the 1974 TV film Killdozer. And Killdozer is one of those movies and basically ideas that has taken on a life of its own, and it goes back as early as 1945 and even leading to today when people are now releasing documentaries with the name referring to an incident that happened in the early 2000s when a guy took a bulldozer, built it into a tank, and went on a rampage.
June 2004.
Yeah, 2004. Okay, right. That and it has existed in many formats, from short story,
novella,
comic book, novella. Right. Sorry, novella to comic book to TV movie to.
Now comes the Nerd Jack.
Yes,
Killdozer.
Yes,
published in 1944. Astounding was written by Theodore Sturgeon. Theodore Sturgeon is unfortunately not as well known now as he was back in the day. In the 50s, he was one of the most anthologized short story writers. I'm a huge Theodore Sturgeon fan. If you like Kurt Vonnegut, Kilgore Trout is based on Theodore Sturgeon. Among Theodore Sturgeon's contributions to the genre is an emphasis on loneliness and how to cure it, a sense of gender fluidity, and writing about homosexuality well before the genre was comfortable with it, except for maybe Phil Farmer. He wrote two of the very best episodes of the original Star Trek, as well as credited with coming up with the Prime Directive. And he wrote a novel called More Than Human, which was published in, well, I think Baby is 3, which is the central novella, and then he turned into a book with 2 other novellas. I think it came out in 53 or 54, and there is no doubt in my mind that More Than Human, through the lens of Jack Kirby, is where X-Men comes from. Because Jack Kirby was a huge science fiction fan. He definitely read Sturgeon, and you can easily see 10 years later, seeds that were planted by Theodore Sturgeon's story about the next evolution of humanity, involving a team of misfit mutants with superpowers learning to act as a group, percolating and eventually becoming what was originally called the Mutants and then became the X-Men.
This is one that a name that more people should know because of his incredible influences that are still playing out in pop culture.
I know, and he's one of the most literary of the science fiction writers. I mean, he and Bradbury are both meant to be read out loud.
They are together.
And Theodore Sturgeon wrote some of the best stories about, I know what you would call it, alien love, dark fantasy love, alternate love, that the genre ever saw, including into the episode of Star Trek that he's most famous for, which is Amok Time, which is about Vulcan love, Pon farr.
And Dan, who was one of the main producing forces behind Star Trek?
The same guy who produced Killdozer.
That is correct.
Which is probably how it all came about. Now, there's also an interesting thing is my first experience with Killdozer was in the Marvel comic Unknown Worlds or Worlds Unknown issue 6, which featured a Gil Kane cover. The interior was by Jerry Conway and dastardly Dick Ayers, and it's Killdozer. And the cover, of course, in no way resembles the actual story in the comic, because there's a woman being menaced by a bulldozer with fangs that talks. It says, "How dare you defy me?" But what's interesting about the comic is, even though there's a blurb in the corner that says, "As seen on TV," the comic came out before the TV movie. So when the comic came out, I'm like, "As seen on TV? What?" The comic, which is very much talked about as being an adaptation of the TV movie, there are differences between all 3 versions. All 3 are worth viewing. You're not going to be able to find the comic on Comixology, but you will be able to find it for like $4 at a comic book shop or online.
And there are versions of it archived online as well, where you can see it. We're going to have links to all these various versions. Part of what was happening in 1974 with TV movies, especially with genre ones, is that they were getting huge numbers and they could be made, and this one was made relatively inexpensively for, like
what the budget was?
Feature film. According to the director on the Blu-ray, there's an audio interview. It was around $2 million, I believe it was.
Do we have a copy of the product?
It's
Yay!
Can you hold it so
again.
people, can you either turn off your background or move back?
Hold it to your chest.
To your chest. No, stop getting. No,
what I've done in previous ones is we just it just cut. Dan,
go back.
Dan,
I'm gonna pop a graphic right now.
Stop
leaning in. Dan, it just pops in.
Just stop leaning in.
There now.
But that's why we put the
That's
graphic
okay.
there.
Just stop leaning in.
Dan,
don't worry. I'm gonna flash my little thingy that says everybody need to shut up. Is everyone good? I didn't have to. Okay. Now we're gonna continue.
I loved it. I watched Killdozer. I did, like, it's the type of movie that I feel like there's a phase that I remember going through where I was just really into construction vehicles, like right around like 5 or 6 years. I feel like boys kind of go through that, where it's just like you don't really know what they are, but they're just awesome.
I went through that phase too, but I watched Bob the Builder.
What if Bob the Builder went cuckoo bananas and started running people over.
So-
That's essentially what the
Right. So
Killdozer's plot is.
the original story, which you can find and read, and you should, it takes place during World War II. And they are banking an airstrip for the Pacific invasion. In real life, at one period during the war, Sturgeon was a merchant marine, and he also had a gig on Puerto Rico running a bulldozer. So there's some rooted autobiographical stuff in there. In the comic book, there's an Aztec temple, and in the TV movie, there's a meteor.
Yeah, and it's vaguely reminiscent of Tremors, like the
Yeah.
setting.
And
It's
Maximum
oil.
Overdrive and The Thing.
It's a
It
Yeah.
was very Maximum Overdrive for sure.
Okay,
Like
okay.
I love that it was hunting them.
But I liked that it hunted them with about the level of ferociousness as like a walker from The Walking Dead, like a singular
totally,
one.
yeah.
And you're like, oh,
Um,
they're totally gonna get away, and they just don't.
And it doesn't need fuel. It like runs on the fumes of its own rage.
Yeah.
like Dan.
Like Dan. The only thing that I really felt like it needed that would have taken it to like a whole nother level for me is if they figured out a way to give it eyebrows. Like it like they gave
yeah.
it like these like little headlight eyeballs that I felt like if there was just like some type of
No, this is exactly on the comic. You can find Gil Kane's
the
original
comic has
sketch for the
eyebrows?
cover, and then you see the cover they published, and literally John Romita went in and put eyebrows on it.
good.
Wait, did any of you
That's how
guys
you know
have
it's
that
mad.
school bus who showed up with the eyebrows and whatnot to teach you like school safety? None of you guys? They should
That's-
change the cast. I'm gonna flash a photo right here. This should be
Yeah,
the bulldozer.
Yes.
The
right,
magic school
right
bus?
here. There's this school bus they take to schools and they teach kids about school safety. What? You guys never had to see the school bus?
We grew up in a like, here's school safety. Get out.
I didn't go to
If it
school.
catches
Don't buy
on fire-
drugs from the clown in the van. That was our school safety lecture.
Well, I think this movie is so beautifully TV in the 1970s. I think right when you meet that rock, the first thing I thought was this dude saw one episode of Land of the Lost, heard that Sleestack noise, and then was like, oh, I can use that.
Theodore
like they
Sturgeon
made-
wrote an episode
Yeah.
of Land of the Lost.
They made Land of the Lost.
Oh, did he?
You're right.
Did he? Yes.
Yeah.
That's what it is. So I
So
saw
he knew
Land
what
of
he
the
was
Lost
doing.
growing up. Like
Yeah.
that was when I watched very heavily growing up.
The director Jerry London had also done stuff like that, but also the Brady Bunch and
Okay.
other comedies. So
Mhm.
he had been working kind of in that zone that you're talking about. And again, you can see that in this film. It's very interesting.
It's just the intro of the film alone, right? I mean, the film starts there's the meteor landing, and then when we
Space.
get to the present day, our intro to the cast is Clint Walker driving a Jeep,
Yes.
waving
Yes.
at everyone at work. There's 6 people on an island, and it's like he just showed up.
So the other thing that I really loved was just the blue filter as the special effects. They were like,
special
they were
effect.
like, they went
Occasionally, they overexpose.
occasionally, but that's what I love, the just flash of the blue filter, and they went, that guy's dead. That guy got burned alive. And then
Death
ooh,
looks like
I mean, the best thing is when they Jaws the bulldozer, they went full Jaws on it, which came out after. So I guess
First.
you can't say that but Jaws got inspiration from this movie. For sure.
And Clint starred in Claws, renamed Night of the Grizzly, which is a movie based on an episode of Cheyenne and Jaws.
So this just everything's connected. Everything's
Yeah.
related in the archives. Don't get it twisted, and we know it all.
I don't think, did you ever talk to Clint Walker personally?
Yeah,
Sam?
once in the studio and then at the Paley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like we talked to him a few times, and he would call one
And,
of our
every now and then I would get the phone and it would be like, oh, is Mike there?
yeah, because he'd be calling our boss
Yeah.
and trying to get him to eat his mushrooms that he was growing on his ranch in Grass Valley. Clint Walker was the guy you see on screen. Like he was a friendly giant right up until his death. Like
Super nice man.
I'd like to talk to you about these things.
At one point, we actually, Matt, you talked to him about the things.
That's right, I did.
Yes, and he actually got a little shamefaced about the drug use and the things.
There was some drug use which we weren't. I don't really stand behind. That's right, because we interviewed him for the Warner Archive podcast when we came out with this movie, The Finks, which is a cult movie through and through, where he had a small part. But that's another recommendation.
Where he was playing Clint Walker.
Yeah, he basically played Clint Walker, and that movie was largely shot in Yugoslavia. At the time, it has
unlike Killdozer, which was shot in Ventura.
It was shot in Santa Clarita mostly, not on the beach. But again, the Blu-ray has a commentary track, which is great. But I especially love the interview with the director where he talks about his background and what he brought into it. And he talks about the blue filter was the one special effect, and the other was they had a guy inside the cabinet driving.
Yeah.
Is that what was going on?
Yeah, there was like a little guy driving the bulldozer the whole time.
That's great.
And then they
So is that why it felt like a raised bulldozer? Like
those were that big. They were that big, like that.
Well, that's what's so great about it. The moment where the bulldozer is fighting the big shovel, that's what they call it. I don't know what to call that machine. It just rivaled. Okay, there it is. It rivaled the level of carnage when the Spinosaurus fights the T-Rex in Jurassic Park.
That's exactly,
3.
yeah.
Right.
Like that's the level of fight that is.
I'm just like, Michael Bay, here are your Dinobots. Get to work.
Exactly.
Yeah, those were
that was definitely my favorite scene. And it kind of reminded me a little bit of the final fight in Aliens too, where it's like, well, I'm gonna need a power loader. Like where it's like, what is the biggest piece of machinery I can like tool up with to fight this thing?
There is also no question that Cameron saw Killdozer, because if you've seen the beginning of Terminator and you read the Killdozer comic or the original novella, it's the same beginning, only it's the past instead of the future.
That's correct, because the novella starts with an ancient society on Earth and these wars, like this whole backstory, which I actually like eliminating it, because you're like the characters and you don't know
what's going on, and someone's running around saying a bulldozer is killing. You're going to be like, that guy's crazy.
Yeah, and that's what makes this fun. And of course, because it was all shot on film, they did this is just a 2K remaster. But
looks great.
It looks freaking great. You can see all these details, which again, were never designed to be seen, right? This was designed for TV. This was originally viewed by something like, I think it was like 25 million. You know, I mean, just like, these are numbers that nobody gets today in television. So this little low budget movie, but it hasn't disappeared, but it is much less in the cultural conversation and worth rediscovering.
My final statement is that this is a great movie. Like, you could show it to your kids if you wanted to. No blood on screen. It's great. When somebody dies, it's just, the burial site. Blue light burial site. That's it. Somebody passed.
And interestingly enough, same thing in the comic version. The deaths are all off panel.
Yeah.
Exactly. So there you go. A nice kid-friendly bulldozer spectacular there. Yeah.
And speaking of kid-friendly and dozing, I believe that's a great segue into our stuff you can't easily see segue.
You don't want to sleep on this kid special here, which is called, somebody give me a name, because I don't remember the exact title.
Cartoon All-Stars to the Rescue.
Cartoon All-Stars to the Rescue, which you can't see, Dan.
But the graphic will be right here. I love that the graphics on the box are better than the graphics of the actual cartoon.
So that is a VHS box because although Cartoon All Stars to the Rescue came out on VHS, it has not subsequently been released.
Wait, when did it come out? That's my big question, because those are the voices I really remember from all of those cartoons growing up. Like that is the Simon, Alvin,
first time
Theodore
someone
I know.
other than Mel Blanc voiced Bugs and Daffy.
So,
yes, no,
really?
Bugs was wrong and Daffy was wrong. I could tell.
Yeah, because Mel had just died. Anyway.
So when this was first aired simultaneously on 4 networks in 1990, and then McDonald's distributed this VHS afterwards. This was made by Disney Buena Vista and distributed, and McDonald's, because they were a big sponsor, they distributed it for free. And any video store could get a copy for free, and everything was free. This was all a giant volunteer project. But because it has so many different IPs from so many different studios, even today with all the buying and selling of the IPs, it still would be impossible to recreate the circumstances to allow this to be re-released. So we only have legal version. The only legal way to see it is that through a VHS, much like this one. I guess that's it, really. And there are illegal versions on YouTube.
I watched one of those illegal versions, and let me tell you, the sound cuts off randomly. At least it did for me.
There's a wonderful VHS recreation on YouTube where you see the play button being hit. You see a very earnest Ronald McDonald House ad, and then at the time President George H.W. Bush, his wife Barbara, and his dog Millie, who at the time, although it wasn't diagnosed until I think a year or two later, all were suffering from lupus.
That's right.
Oh.
That's a weird fact, and they did not give it to each other.
So to be clear, in 1990, if something was simulcast on 4 networks, you were going outside or you were watching this.
Yeah.
And so as a child, what you got to see was a special in which a young sister is fighting for the soul of her older brother who has gotten involved with the devil weed. And as the devil weed inevitably does, has led to him stealing his little sister's piggy bank in order to fuel his drug program. Now, the thing is, the
program.
Yes, he's got a full program because
addiction.
he's moving on to alcohol.
And
Yeah.
And crack.
Does he get to crack? I think he's
twice.
It's suggested.
Twice.
It's
they show
suggested.
crack.
And
well, no, they show it, but he never does it. He's
Right,
just
he
like,
doesn't do it.
They keep begging him for
because
it.
the kids who watched this special saw more upfront drug use in this special than they had ever seen on TV before.
That's true.
And the weird communication that I feel like they just totally didn't see in making this is that it really reads like by doing drugs you will get to interact with the cartoon shows.
Yes. No.
Like oh man, I get stoned and Michelangelo's gonna show up.
Yes.
When the problem manifests itself and the cartoon all-stars start showing up to the rescue, they each sort of enter the story through their own supranormal, to use Noah words, means of it. Like the Smurfs come out of a comic book, Alf comes out of a publicity photo, Alvin and the Chipmunks come out of a record album, Baby Muppet Kermit's a desk lamp or a clock. When they are confronting the older brother with his drug problem, the only way to really nip it in the bud and make him confront his demons is to send him into the dark carnival of his mind,
And
where
also
he
sing him a
meets.
song.
It's totally a psychedelic answer to a drug abuse problem.
Well, I think, the message you really get from this, I feel like, is the clout you get from smoking weed is much less than the clout you get from having every single star cartoon character sing you a song.
There's Winnie the Pooh, there's Alf, And Alf has a wonderful team up, probably my favorite Alf team up of all time,
Alf
with
and Garfield?
Yes. Yeah. Alf, who keeps threatening to eat Garfield.
Yes, what's that about? Somebody explain that to me. I didn't understand that.
Alf's
In the show.
people like to eat cats.
Yeah. That's
Really?
Yeah.
That was a network show.
Oh my gosh.
On was it Fox? An early,
I think it was NBC.
NBC. It was an NBC show where cat eating was a big joke. And then that cat eating went to the Alf cartoon. And so naturally he would be threatening Garfield.
I'm glad they stuck by their guns on that.
Dinner.
Yeah. Oh my God. And then there are the main, the whole cast of Smurfs, but including Brainy and Papa Smurf mostly. There's, I said Winnie the Pooh, but there was also Tigger. There's Alvin and the Chipmunks, Bugs Bunny. There's Daffy. There's Slimer. There's just Michelangelo from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, who at 1990 were going through a whole ownership change. So they are not on the box nor mentioned on the box, but he has a big part. There's it's Muppet Babies version of Kermit and Miss Piggy and Huey, Dewey, and Louie. So it had every major cartoon studio, but then they needed to come up with a villain. And so they created one, which was a character called Smoke. And Smoke is the bad devil on your shoulder.
He's voiced by George C. Scott, isn't he?
Yes.
Honestly, he's one of the #1 villains I've seen, though. The way that he's just constantly moving throughout this screen,
yeah,
he's great. He's
honestly
amazing.
Created a fully scary villain. That was a Ralph Bakshi cartoon.
Smoke is the devil on your shoulder. Yeah. And then playing the angel on the shoulder is Bugs.
Bugs!
And if Bugs is the angel on your shoulder, you're in trouble because that dude's a straight up anarchist troublemaker.
But now when you watch it, the attitude towards especially marijuana as in it is now, it's now like largely okay within society. It's not considered a big deal.
So what you're saying is
so out of step.
We should organize a group watch party, and instead of a drinking party, it will be a smoking party.
So this isn't the first time I've seen this. That was a party that I was present for, hosted by our good friend Elliot Rutstein.
Did he bring out crack?
Yes.
Every time you talk about marijuana, immediately
you must also then progress to crack.
Yeah.
That is the next step.
It's
yes,
logical.
Obviously. Yes, and you steal things. You immediately, once you start using marijuana, you just start stealing, and you act really weird, and you're not yourself, and you steal alcohol, and it's just like every drug.
And then you get a Disney song from my favorite era of Disney song. Menken and Ashman were the team who successfully rebooted the Disney musical, like their songs from Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast. I didn't remember that they did the song in it, and the song is actually good.
Song's good.
The
song is catchy, yes.
A good cartoon. It is well written. It has a good beginning and a middle and an end. And then when you add the oddness of the topic and the intro by the President of the United States, and
it becomes a must watch.
That's a must watch.
Yeah, where's the cartoon all-star telling kids to get vaccinated? I mean, what's happened?
We need one. Where is it?
Cartoon vaxxers to the rescue. Normally, this is where we would read viewer letters, but we have no letters because no one's written.
Well, I was informed of that, and so I reached out to the communities that some friends and family I know traverse. So this question is, what is it like to walk through a real film archive where 35mm elements are stored, where you can see something as impossible as the actual camera negatives, and is there an aura to history around it? Is there a fear associated with such increasingly fragile materials that it could be wiped out by a fire, by flood, careless handling, whatever? What has been your experience with this?
This person has clearly seen Inglourious Bastards and is afraid.
At Warner Brothers, that one is nitrogen cooled. It So when you go inside, you see the giant tanks. That's the first thing you notice. And when you come inside, it is at a consistent temperature. But the building is also old enough that it is rumored that Jack Warner had it hardened against nuclear strike.
Right. It has the
Like
doors into the building, although it's a studio facility. So there's a facade on it that
Yes.
makes it look very homey. When you actually are opening the door, it's a blast door.
Yeah.
It is a very serious door.
That is where Dan and I would go in the zombie apocalypse if they'd let us in. Unfortunately, the only thing to eat there is movies and videotape.
So, you know, I've been in storage spaces, I've been in warehouses, I've been in labs. I've never been around a large collection of nitrate films because I'm not suicidal, although I'm curious. And I've never been to one of the salt mines, which I would love to go.
The salt mines are fascinating, and I haven't been there either.
Now
I've been to a salt
it-
mine,
it-
but not the salt mine.
Right. And I'd say like the most sort of archivist experience I've had was at a local major university that has a very large collection right up there with the Library of Congresses. And I've been walked through their reels on their shelves. And although there is the excitement of seeing the cans and the labels and the years, mostly there's a sense of fear because they're stacked very high and these are big metal things and you're in LA. And I'm thinking, boy, I'd hate to be here when the big one hits.
Dan and I did not work inside those facilities. That is like a whole separate operation, but that is where elements would be pulled from. That's where different prints would come through and be shipped. I was able to go to a Warner Brothers facility, which is not so conveniently located next to the Burbank Fireman School, and where they would do simulated fires right next to that building. And I asked them, I was like, does this ever make you nervous? And they're like, nah. It made me nervous. But in there, they had a wonderful vinegar vault, which is where they keep safety film, which is newer than like nitrate film, but it's
safety because it doesn't blow up.
It doesn't blow up. However, there is a vinegar syndrome is a more, I guess the best way to say it is a contagious contaminant that can get into libraries and cause the film to slide off the emulsion. And it gives off a smell that is like the worst salad you can possibly imagine, a death salad that eventually disintegrates the film. And they showed me, because they try to preserve this, because sometimes you can, under certain conditions, unspool the film and maybe scan it just like once, and then it has to be disposed. So they don't know, or they think that maybe there'll be a better way to do it in the future. Like they keep these things because they're important, but they've showed me cans that they open up and it's dust, right? That's an extreme example of something gone wrong.
Some say the film world will die in fire. Others say the film world will die in spice.
Yeah. So that's
anyway.
Yeah.
Noah, any recommendations for viewing, or you've seen anything you like recently?
Really enjoyed The Deep House.
The Deep House? What's that?
So Deep House was, I've recently been on a run of underwater films, just films that take place either in like a lab in the Mariana Trench, or like a diving movie. Like there's a diving heist film, I think, called The Deep, that I'm pretty stoked to watch. But just sort of like rolling through all of like the underwater films that I've found out there, I came across one that came out last year called The Deep House, and it is a haunted house movie that takes place in a house at the bottom of a lake in the south of France. And it's these two YouTubing urban explorers that hear about this house that is down there, and so they go out trying to like find it. There's like a guide that takes them through the woods. He warns them that it's not safe, and they do it anyway because kids, and they dive down into the lake, and once inside like this sunken house, they get trapped, and it turns into a ghost story. And so like all of the same rules that apply to your standard ghost story are sort of retrofitted to this underwater environment that they just it's so like beautifully atmospheric in terms of how they put the film together. I mean, it's a decent enough story. I mean, it doesn't do anything that you haven't seen before on land, but like that added variable of it being submerged just really made it something on a technical level that like I'd never experienced before. It had a really good ending. Like I liked the ending. I felt like it was a little there's a thin layer of cheese that surrounded a lot of the details, but you know, nothing that I don't think with the right mindset anybody could see their way through. But yeah, it stuck with me. It's a lot of fun.
That sounds pretty cool, because underwater movies tend to be introduced when newer technologies come in, because it enables the filmmakers to do things underwater, right? Like literally underwater, that they couldn't do before. The footage
like
comes
what,
out
CGI
or if you're Cameron, you're inventing the technology that lets you shoot underwater.
Yeah, before it's ready. Like,
yeah.
But that's also because that makes it technology, kind of pushes that forward.
So we've got Deep House, which is underwater haunted house. From an earlier conversation with Kelsey, there's Deep Blue Sea, which is underwater giant monster movie with an underwater science lab, right?
The Deep.
Even though it's
Sequest is what got me into this.
Oh,
so
right.
It wasn't even a movie.
You like the Titanic.
Yeah,
we'll talk about that later.
Is that an underwater movie?
The Titanic is the ultimate underwater haunted house. Like,
yes.
It's that's what's always like attracted to me to sort of like that history anyway. It was just the fact that like at the bottom of the sea exists this explorable structure that is haunted. Like, I mean, there's such a tragedy that occurred that like, everybody that goes down there just feels the experience that happened to it.
I also was thinking of, and I think it's called Open Water.
Okay.
The movie about the people treading because they were left behind.
That's a good lo-fi.
I love that movie because it's a survival movie, but in the desert, but the desert is the water, and it's going to kill you. It's a great.
And that's not the same as Without a Paddle.
Pitch is so Solow.
No.
What movie is this?
Without the Paddle.
No, but that's also a very good movie. I love that movie.
Those are all great water movies. Well, thank you, Noah, for those viewing suggestions. So if you want to send us a message of some kind, please write us at archiveguys.com, or you can contact any of our social media profiles. I'm at Mr. Matt Patterson, or you can do at thearchiveguys.com, or just go to archiveguys.com and there's a form where you can send us a question. All those things work. We want to answer them and not lean on our guests to ask us to answer a simple question for 45 minutes.
And if you would like us to discuss your film, book, graphic novel, newspaper strip, TV show, original streaming series, or maker video, you can send those to us too, and I'll be happy to review it.
Thank you for listening to the Archive Guys podcast. I'm Matt Patterson.
I'm Kelsey Milburn.
I'm Deep One Ferranti.
And thanks to our special guest, Noah Mucci.
Man, I'm Noah. Hopefully we sync.
See you guys next time. Bye.